This is treatment-free beekeeping, where we talk about the steps you can take or what it's like to try to keep bees treatment-free. From the beginning to hopefully a successful end, we'll go through the process as we experience it in our life on Wildflower Bee Farm. This is treatment-free beekeeping. Let's get started. This is Hank for the Wildflower Bee Farm. It's May 9th, 2024. Yes, just a day since my last recording, but I've been just sort of inundated with different thoughts about the findings on the impact that the queen has in deciding on what kind of eggs she actually lays based on a number of factors. So I wanted to talk about a bit again today and then talk about a little study I'm proposing that I'm going to be starting next week. Nothing's new here. It's just I'm really confused because for many years this has been discussed in the literature, but no one's really sort of grabbed onto it to change the practice. And the practice I want to talk about is something we've all been doing. One or two things. We're getting queens from someone else, and those are usually done through, rearing queens or grafting, as they call it, where a worker larvae is taken from a cell and put into a large artificial queen cell that then becomes a queen bee that is successfully hatched and raised. Well, the research shows us there's a problem with this. That's called an emergency queen. Now let's think about this for a minute, and I should have thought it through, but I didn't, like most of us, I guess. I missed it. That an emergency is a brief type of intervention until a more stable thing can happen. That's how I see an emergency solution. So, your roof is leaking, so you throw some tar on it, but you need a new roof. And later you put a new roof on it. Now, that's kind of dumb, but I think you know what I'm saying. And why I never thought of that when it comes to the beehive, I have no idea. So here's what happens. When we do a split, whether it's a walk away or whatever it may be, usually we are encouraging the bees to do what's called an emergency creation of a queen from a worker egg or larvae. So the bees do that. They create a queen, but depending on the time of the year, what they need to be able to do then, of course, is, I think, and that's what we're going to get to in this podcast, create a new queen based on their regular principles. And here's what I think is a regular beehive principle. If they're going to do a replacement of the existing queen or build another queen to swarm, they will actually create queen cups. So they start to create a larger cell, and when they do that, the queen comes along. And here's what the queen does. Do you ever wonder how a queen knows to lay drones versus lay worker eggs? Well, she does that by measuring the size of the opening of the cell with her leg. Now, if we assume that's true, it would make sense that the queen can selectively decide which eggs she's going to lay. And scientists have proven, and the study by WEI, a maternal effect on queen production in honeybees, just came out 2019. Well, I guess that's 5 years ago. So if the queen can selectively decide what eggs to lay in those two situations, worker or drone, it makes sense that when she comes along and there's a queen cup, she goes, whoa, I got to lay one of those special eggs. Now, these special eggs are very similar to the worker eggs, but the researchers out of Australia that I just mentioned, and the topic is a maternal effect on queen production in honeybees. It's a great article. It's a short one that you can actually get for free. They said that when they looked at the eggs that the queens laid in the larger queen cups, they had different positive properties when compared to the emergency queen eggs made for the sake of workers that were then used for emergency reasons, and extra superior to those where larvae were used. They also said that these types of, let's take an example of this. So let's say, as most of us, you have a emergency queen in a beehive. Well, that emergency queen was created from other emergency queens, from other, like the great-grandmothers, and so it's been a very long time, right, since the bees were creating a queen that was laid by a queen into a cup. Now, if we think about this, the problem we're having that I had this year on the farm, about 95% of my loss were queen failures. Well, it makes sense because the majority were emergency queens. In a few instances, the bees did requeen, get rid of the old queen, or swarm, which meant the queen that stayed would have been created, more than likely created, from a queen egg that was laid in a queen cup. Now, if you think of the diathesis stress article I wrote, by the way, we're up to 300 readers of that article, which is pretty exciting. So it's diathesis stress and honeybee hive failure. You can get it on researchgate.com before it comes out in Bee World for free. But the point of all that is, this is one factor. This isn't the only reason. But think for a minute. If it adds a 13 or 14% of the variance of bee survival is based on where the queen came from. Did it come from an emergency cell, or did it come from a queen egg, as we'll call it? Why not use queen egg? So let's assume we agree. Let's assume that the research out of Australia is true, and this is a proven fact that queens will lay queen eggs in queen cups, which are superior in many ways: longevity, size, the ability to lay eggs, just all kinds of things which make you think that these honeybees, these queens, are now set for more than a 6 month to 12 month lifespan, that they are now more resilient, they're going to produce healthier brood, and so on. So what do we do about it? Well, the first thing would be, I would think, and this is where I'm kind of stick-handling with this little project I'm going to do, is when you go into a hive and think of creating a split, only to use the two type of cells that you believe were created by the queen laying into a queen cup. And how do you know that? Well, we have swarm cells. Some would argue, well, it's too late. By the time you got swarm cells, they're getting set to swarm, blah, blah, blah. I don't know, but what I do know is that's a better queen. The other, and I'm going to start experimenting, is to place within the hive 4 or 5 artificial queen cups to see if it can encourage the queen to lay in them and create queens that way. So it looks like the science is clear, and it looks like it's time for us to take that science and say, okay, what can we do about it? How can we change the way we interact? And it perfectly explains why the queens that we receive live on average 3 to perhaps 9 months, because they're emergency queens. They're only designed to live for a brief period of time so that the hive can create new genetics and a longer living queen. Interestingly enough, I do know that our 2 survivor hives that are starting to rock here in the farm, at least the one is, and I don't know why, because I didn't think they'd make it. They all had queen cell or 2 from last year, and it looked like they had done that. They had swarmed, which means the queen that is surviving this winter would have been one that was created through that process. So I think there's something to be said for this. It also, when they looked at different species of bees, or sorry, I shouldn't say species, strains, Russians versus other bees, they found that there was a relationship between queen longevity and size of the queens and her ability to survive many different stresses that are placed on queens, including a flying out and returning after the mating flight. So much new information. I mean, this kept me up last night. I want to put it out there for you. I've got to, if you're watching this on YouTube, you might be going, well, why is he showing this video? Well, that's my survivor hive a few days ago that I thought was toast. and you'll see they're pretty aggressive. They've got ants bugging them and flies bugging them, which I don't know if they're going to survive, but it's an interesting kind of thing. On Monday, I'll be opening them up again to see if there's any brood or queen cells, and if there are, I'm going to put 4 fake queen cups in it to see if this theory actually works. This is Hank for treatment-free beekeeping at the Wildflower Bee Farm. You have an amazing day. To learn more about our project, make sure you go to wildflowerbeefarm.com. There you can find further information on the latest research articles we've put out, find out where you can pick up some t-shirts, and all the other interesting things we're doing on the farm. That's wildflowerbeefarm.com.